The prospect of a UN Security Council endorsement of an Iran nuclear deal has caused an uproar among some U.S. lawmakers. They accused the Obama administration of using the Security Council to sidestep Congress. And they say it raises questions about the UN's role and what a Security Council resolution can and cannot do. As CCTV's Lilling Tan reports, at the heart of this debate, sanctions.
Everything is important until you resolve it.
It may seem obvious to some that the UN Security Council has a role to play in the Iran nuclear negotiations, given that the UN sanctions are among those Iran wants lifted. And the negotiating parties include Germany plus the Council's 5 permanent members: China, Russia, France, Britain and the US. But when news broke that the US and its partners had started talks with the Security Council on a resolution to lift sanctions under a possible deal, some US lawmakers cried foul.
Some U.S. Republican lawmakers accused the president of trying to use the UN to bypass Congress on matters related to an Iran deal. The White House says that's not true. So who's right and who's wrong? To find out, we posed these questions to a panel of experts, including the UN.
Question 1. A Security Council resolution to lift sanctions on Iran can force the U.S. to lift its own sanctions too. Is it true or false?
That's false, because other countries are completely free to decide whether they want to impose sanctions on Iran under their own laws.
They can't do things the Security Council prohibits. But if the UN Security Council were to say there are no more sanctions on Iran, this doesn't actually require the United States to lift its sanctions on Iran.
If the UN lifts its sanctions on a country, that broadly is a go-ahead for member states to have whatever commercial relationships they want to have. If they choose individually or collectively to maintain sanctions, that's their business. We don't have a role in that.
Question 2. A UN Security Council resolution is required to back an Iran deal to lift or suspend sanctions, or parties would violate existing international law. True or false?
That's true, because currently in the sanctions regime that the UN Security Council has put in place, there is an absolute ban on Iran to enrich uranium. And from what I understand, the agreement that is currently being negotiated would involve or would allow Iran to have some enrichment capacity. So in that sense, the possible agreement would then be in violation of the current Security Council resolutions.
And the only way those rules can be reversed is by another act of the UN Security Council.
A Security Council resolution to lift sanctions would open the door for the U.S. and other countries to do the same with theirs. But for some U.S. lawmakers, the issue is whether the White House can do that without congressional approval. Lilling Tan, CCTV, New York.